Hi guys, I am no videographer or YouTuber, so forgive this video. I don't know if I'll find out how to edit it or not, so if it's a little disorganized or whatever, please bear with me. It's become very clear to me that the situation I've experienced the last year especially, that I'm gonna get, seems like no justice in the courts. The state has really discriminated against me. It's been very scary, and I don't know how else to get my story out there. And right now I have a lot of people intent on misrepresenting me and continuing to throw dirt on my name, as they would say. But it's gotten to the point where it's a lot worse than that. So for those who don't know, I'm Julie, and I have rheumatoid arthritis, and I found out in December of 2022 that I have ankylosing spondylitis as well. My disease is at the point where it's eroding my joints. So that's like a later, more progressive stage of these diseases. I was told back in 2015 that I probably have early onset rheumatoid arthritis. I was like a young, kind of overconfident RN, single mom, and I only had symptoms in my wrists at that time, so I just attributed it to overuse. The ironic part of that is within, a few years of that, I would be seeking a diagnosis and getting ignored and told it wasn't rheumatoid arthritis when indeed it was. So, with that said, let's get down to it. It took me quite a few years to admit that I was disabled, but my hands, I'm sorry for saying so much, by the way. This is my first time doing this. My God. So I just want to share my story again. I probably won't get the justice I deserve, so I would at least like to get the truth out there. So let's start at the beginning of 2022. So I finally had a proper diagnosis of rheumatoid arthritis at that point, and I had been started on methotrexate at the beginning of the year, and I'd already been on hydroxychloroquine for years. Now, methotrexate is a chemotherapeutic agent, but it is used in autoimmune disease. It's a first line of treatment for rheumatoid arthritis because it is cheap and readily available, and the medications start getting increasingly more expensive, especially the biologics. So insurances, especially Mass Health, I live in Massachusetts, I'm unemployed at this point, I'm disabled, in the process of applying for disability and all that. So you have to go through, the cheaper treatments first. So even though methotrexate wasn't working for me and it was making me extremely sick, my rheumatologist at Tufts had made it pretty clear, like, the best chance at getting approved for the biologics would be to, go through the full 6 months of chemotherapy. So I did that. And I was going to Tufts Medical. I have a great team now, and I had a great team in the beginning. I was diagnosed by the chief of rheumatology and his fellow, Dr. Samir Shah, who is incredible. They diagnosed me and looked over my treatment. So come June, I had to have surgery for a carpal tunnel and cubital tunnel. As you can see, I got a scar right there. I had those both released, and it wasn't healing. And it was June, it was summertime. I started having symptoms of vasculitis. For those who don't know, that's like vessel inflammation. My nerves were inflamed. I was getting such bad brain fog that I couldn't think or even speak clearly sometimes. I was fully coherent and knew what was going on, but as far as communicating in and out, it was very difficult for me. And I started to realize how the people around me were treating me, especially when I would have brain fog and when I, started not to heal. People around me just, it was like I was a burden to them, especially family, which was pretty disappointing. I was grateful at first because I had family that would take my daughter to the beach and to swimming pools and stuff, because I was so, like, this stayed open for almost a month, and then it was like ulcerating and stuff, so it was very difficult. And anytime I went out to the sun, I was having like an allergic reaction, getting extremely inflamed. My blood pressure was skyrocketing to really scary levels. I had a mix up at Tufts where these new fellows came in, like doctors in training, and the medical record system had switched over at the same time. So I had a brand new fellow cut me off my meds right after surgery, and even cut off my access to prednisone. Told me, we don't always get the diagnoses we want, because she didn't go into the old MIR system and get my notes and my treatment plan. So I had asked some family members if they would come in with me, because I was basically getting bullied by, new providers. And that wonderful Dr. Shah had graduated his fellowship and went on to be a wonderful rheumatologist somewhere else. So after I'd asked for help from my family, I started getting treated really badly. There's some of the houses have like really big animals and stuff like that, and I'd come to go over, and the animals would be like jumping on me and stuff, and it just felt really unsafe. And I started to have like more clear disabilities where I needed accommodations, if you will. I needed like just basic accommodations for my family. Just when I show up, help with the dogs, I need a little extra time to get places, etc. So come to find out, somebody in my family was telling my daughter the entire summer that I didn't need chemotherapy, that I went on it for no reason, basically, and that I was exaggerating my condition, and that they basically have the same disease as me. They do not, just for the record. So my daughter would come home and start treating me, really nasty. She's a preteen, so I'm not holding it against her, but it was just funny. And I'm like, why is she, at the time I didn't know she was being told that I didn't need chemo and that it was all in my head. Just to backtrack a little bit backwards, the year before that, we found out her father had died in Florida, and we had not seen him for a while. I had always thought that he would be around when Ariella was a teenager. When we met, he had lost his long-term relationship. He had met his soulmate already before we left, and very sadly, she had passed away. So, Ariella was a blessing, and very happy that we had met and had her. But, he moved to Florida when she was young, and like I said, I always expected him to be around when she was older and he had time to grieve, and maybe he would come back. So he passed away in March of 2021. So that was kind of a shocker, to say the least. Then I found out from his wife down in Florida that a family member of mine, the same one who said that I didn't need chemo to my daughter, had told him that I had terminated his parental rights. So don't even bother reaching out to us. Now, I wish he hadn't listened. I wish he had reached out, and he didn't. But if you're starting to get the picture of how my family acts behind the scenes, it's pretty alarming, right? So even after that whole situation, I let things slide. We have little ones in the family. I did my best to keep the peace. But as my health conditions got worse and, people were less accommodating to me, it started to just get scary. And my boundaries, I learned to set, stiffer boundaries with people, because I felt really disrespected. And just to be even treated like I was making things up or exaggerating, that was ridiculous to me. Like, I've literally worked since I was 14 years old. I have very strong work ethic, and it was terrible being let out of work for medical reasons. It was awful. So back to and then so then 6 months after that, about 6, maybe not even 3 months, 3 months after that, I found out that my ex, who had helped me raise my daughter for 5 or 6 years when Daniel had moved to Florida, that he had passed away. Granted, we weren't together for years, things like that, but he knew things about me, things about my family, that nobody else did. He had a really good understanding of me and, my past, and again, my family history. And even though we weren't together, I was always kind of rooting for him. And I just had some comfort knowing both him and Dan, both my exes, that they were, on this planet somewhere, because I knew that, God forbid anything ever happened, that, they would be there for my daughter, if anything was to ever happen. And it just gave me comfort and security. So that was a really shocking, sad year for me. Made me realize what was important, what's not important. And it was tough. It was definitely really tough. And not to mention, I'm also grieving my old self, my independence that I once had, the ability to just get up and do what I wanted when I wanted, to be able to go grocery shopping without it, blowing up my hands and taking me out for a day or two afterwards, right? Me and my daughter always had a really active life, taking day trips. Every summer it was beach, or, if we weren't doing the beach, we'd be hiking, or we'd be doing, something outside nature, throwing a football around, or painting, or art, or whatever. We were very active. We always had a lot of different things that we could do, So, yeah, it was a lot to not be able to do a lot of the stuff I love anymore. And I know it was a lot of my daughter too. And I know it was a very hard time for her, obviously. So with all that said, so that was 2021. So 2022, so I had the surgery, I cut off my meds. So then I finally got in touch with the chief of rheumatology who I was seeing, and got in with him for August. He saw that, my new x-rays showed progression of the rheumatoid arthritis. He got me started on Enbrel right away. He actually made, I thought this was funny, it's a little keynote, but he made that fellow that had been really arrogant and cut me off my meds. He made her do all the paperwork and pre-authorizations and stuff to get my Enbrel through Mass Health, which I know wasn't an easy thing to do, which that was kind of funny. But so yeah, at this point I had asked my family for help. They were really making me feel like a burden. And I find out they're accusing me behind my back of stealing pills or something. So at that point, I knew from past experiences, because that's a little key word, I knew that a few people in my family had turned on me. Because that's their kid. There's always an accusation. There's always something, right? Because they need justification for treating me badly. So I talked to, the partners of these family members, and they were like, listen, we know that you didn't do that. We know, we trust you, but we're not getting involved in this fight between you girls. We're sick of the fighting. We're sick of the BS, whatever. So that was that, or so I thought. So I actually even went into my child's therapist and explained to her, I said, listen, I'm going to be putting up boundaries with my family. It's going to be hard on Ariella, but some family members are telling her that I didn't even need chemo, that I'm making up my illness. It's confusing her. And the deaths we had the year before, we really need to focus on ourselves and how to move forward through all the trauma that we've been through. And I was like, I'm just letting you know this because historically what will happen is they're going to start making calls to either DCF, some state agencies, or whatever else, because this is what they do. Sad but true. I wasn't so worried though, because I wasn't dating somebody who had issues with addictions anymore. I live a very boring lifestyle these days. So I wasn't worried, but I just wanted the school and my daughter's therapist and people to be aware of, the situation so they could keep a heads up. I thought that would save us in a sense. So it didn't. So I cut off one family member, made it very clear. And then the other one, there was another one where I wasn't very happy with them, but I didn't cut them off. I still let my daughter go there once a month to, hang out and see the kids and everything else. But me and my family weren't good. We weren't doing good. They were telling my daughter it's abusive, that I'm abusive, and I'm abusing her for taking her phone away when she was like not taking care of her new cat, or, not following the rules, not doing homework, things like that. Okay, so they were like literally feeding her stuff this whole entire time, between, well, really the whole year, but between September and November especially. So now this is where we really start to get into it, so buckle up. So in November, there was an incident where my daughter was having a sleepover at my best friend's ex-husband's house, and my daughter started texting me, calling me at 4 a.m. to come get her. This guy had threatened to get into bed with her and her best friend, so yes, his daughter, to silence them, and said, next time you sleep here, I'm sleeping in the bed with you, etc. My daughter's 13 years old. Okay, it was completely inappropriate. She was scared. The daughter was scared. So, and mind you, they called me. My former best friend lived 5 minutes away. They didn't call her. They called me. I was over a half hour away. I went and got them as soon as I got the calls and the texts. Brought them home. Talked to both of them about what happened, and just basically explained to them, like, listen, you can tell me anything, but we are going to have to tell, my best friend, former best friend, about this. So we tried, and the first thing she did was alert the perpetrator and silence the girls. And then I was accused of blowing things up and so on. And I was told that he was not threatening to get into bed to fiddle them. But I don't know, well, why else are you threatening to get in a little girl's bed anyways? Like, that's not normal. It's not okay. And either way, the girls felt like their boundaries were crossed. So they should have been treated with respect with their accusations and heard out, and not silenced and, made to feel like they were wrong and that they were the ones in the wrong. It was completely inappropriate, and it was shocking to me. And this wasn't the first incident since they've been like preteens and teenagers that this friend has given me red flags that basically made me feel like I wasn't fully comfortable with her in her decision making when it came to the teenagers, especially with men, or boys for that matter. So I had actually went to one of my family members, because Ari was supposed to go there that weekend. And even though we hadn't been on good terms, it's my family member. I thought that, well, I got to reach out to somebody because I no longer trust my best friend with my child's interest. So, this family member picks up the phone, and I said, hey, can you please meet me? Something happened the past weekend at a sleepover. Obviously she knows right away who and where the sleepover was, because I only let my daughter sleep over either families or this person's house, right? So she knows right away which friend it is. And she laughs at me. I hear another family member in the background laughing, and tells me if it's so bad, why don't I call DCF? And hung up on me. Now, this was on November 16th. The incident happened on 11/11/22. So this is like days after, right? And so I text her, and I'm like, you know what? I'm done. I'm done. I don't want you guys, don't contact me anymore. Don't contact my daughter. This is over with. This is so inappropriate. And she had hit me back and basically said, keep isolating her away from the family. Okay. So I had plans. Like, again, we were going into family therapy. Ari had a therapist, I had a therapist. I was even going to take a parenting class by Ariela's therapist, just so we could literally get on page and start working through all this trauma and like the toxicity in my family and the changes I had went through, the deaths we had faced, like, et cetera, all the moves we had faced. Like, I had a plan with the school, because her attendance wasn't, the best. She was late a lot. So I went down there with the school. We got a plan on board, and, we had, guidance, the principal, her teachers, everybody on board, right? So trying to do everything I can to support her and myself through this difficult time. So that Friday, so the 18th, I get served with 2 restraining orders from certain family members. Okay, mind you, I have severe joint disease. I'm eroding here. This rotator cuff has been torn for a few years from the rheumatoid or the AS. I'm not sure which one it is exactly. My elbows are affected. All of my knuckle. But what I'm getting at is I can barely do my daily ADLs every day, never mind like food shopping, never mind physically harm somebody, right? So that was wild. And then that Monday I get a call from DCF. Okay, so this is what was reported. Since September 22, the mother has been acting strangely. This is what the caller said. Blank is not sure if this is due to unknown substance abuse, mental health issues, or medical issues. Mother is increasingly paranoid, verbally abusive to child. There's a history of drug use and domestic violence. Mother has significant medical issues, and is concerned she might not be taking her meds as prescribed. Mother has a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder and there's a question of bipolar. No, that's not true. None of that is true. Okay. And I have medical records that show this, that were ignored. Okay. So continue on. Blank stated mother is having delusions. For example, she thinks someone from Social Security is sitting outside watching her every day. She is very paranoid. Blank stated the mother is frequently making statements to Ari that you are not good. You are a bitch. We are not having Christmas. And something about Christmas trees are the devil. I'm not making this. I'm reading this from this report that I requested, okay? The mother is convinced her bones are disintegrating and she's going to die. So she's tells Ari, you're making this worse soon. I'm going to die soon. Guys, I'm not kidding. Like, this is, I had a feeling this was going to happen, but not to this extent, okay? She also tells Ariela, you're never going to see me again. Ariela's just afraid to speak up. Blank stated, this is the first time mother has appeared delusional. She's manic and talks very fast and gets passionate. Her speech is more intense and pressured, a mix of manic and paranoid together. First of all, nobody in my family has graduated past high school. None of them went to college. None of them have any type of like medical experience or any type of psych experience to be talking like this at all. So, and again, I have like medical records, the whole nine. Stated Ari has missed a lot of school this year. Keep that in mind. But the school didn't call. No mandated reports, just this one person 5 times. Yes, 5 times between Thanksgiving and Christmas. Okay? So you're wondering why they would, do this. I had threatened that if they didn't leave me alone, that I would basically expose their food stamp fraud and their mass health fraud. So, to leave me alone. I know, stupid, but I knew they were going to pull something like this and I was scared. And I was really in a bad state. I didn't have my disease under control at the time, really bad brain fog and stuff. So I was also in no position to be defending myself against this crazy stuff. So it goes on. But here's the kicker. This is the scariest part for me. Ready? family has talked about a section for the mother, but may not have clear evidence. Blank has the Quincy Court clinician's number. Family is discussed. Now, family, first of all, my mother is in Florida. My father said he didn't want it, and other than that, I have a very small family, okay? So the family really is only a couple people. Family has discussed a safety plan. Where'd it go? Basically, the scariest part for me was the family has talked about a section for the mother, but may not have clear evidence. For what? For what? Like, first of all, I'm not delusional. I was cutting people off because of the way they were treating me and mistreating me. And then they wouldn't take what Ariella went through seriously and brush that off, so I cut them off, and this attack was launched on me. So that day, as well as getting the call from DCF, which I'm like, I'm not even worried about at this point because the allegations were so ridiculous, and I knew I was not going to have any issue. I knew that, like, my team of doctors would support this and call out these medical things, and I knew that my drug tests I'd take some drug tests and that they would be clean. I wasn't worried about anything, really. I was very hurt and frustrated, but I wasn't so concerned. I thought for sure, like, they're gonna know that this is just BS, right? Right? So not only that day, I decided to call Rockland Police to ask them what I should do, because I felt like my family was doing this because I felt like they were going to try to go for guardianship of my child with the way that they were acting, the things that they were telling my daughter, and how things were moving forward. Hi, Dumpling. Sorry, it's my cat. So Rockland Police start yelling at me, saying that they're already getting calls about me for breaking the restraining orders. Okay? And I'm like, ma'am, I need you to give me the benefit of the doubt here, like, what should I do? So she told me I have to go to court and I have to get a restraining order. So I went down to court, tried to get a restraining order, and find out that somehow, some way, this whole case was moved to Quincy Court out of jurisdiction, which is oddly enough one of the jurisdictions of the family members that was pulling all this, was like the main puppet master, if you will. Okay? So that was weird. And no judge, lawyer, like, nobody could figure this out, why I got switched over. So I don't know if that person has connections. I don't know. Oh, that must just be my paranoia. Excuse me, guys. So the calls continued. I had multiple incidents where police were showing up at my door saying that I had broken the restraining order, this and that, and, you know, I didn't. I was able to, you know, show evidence that I wasn't. So, and then I was explaining my, you know, medical issues to them and showing them medical paperwork to explain that I can't, some days I can't even shower, never mind, you know, hurt somebody else. A lot of people in my family have guns and stuff too. So I'm like, you know, I'm the one that's actually really in fear here, and they're just trying to silence me and get their way. So it gets worse. So on Christmas, I had promised my child that she could see family members on Christmas, and I wish to this day that I didn't promise that, but I did. And so we had a huge fight the day after Christmas because she wanted to go to a certain family's house and I didn't want to, because this was the one that was like calling DCF multiple times and talking behind my back, saying ridiculous stuff, that I'm psychotic, that I'm having delusions, I am abusing my child, that I'm abusing drugs, that I'm totally delusional and crazy, like crazy stuff. And the sad thing is people believe this, because when they say it, they're not like, oh my God, you got to hear about my family member. No, it's like, oh yeah, like, we're so concerned, this is going on, da da da. So it comes from like a place of concern, or so they make it seem. So that makes it more believable for people, especially people that don't realize how sick my family can be. So December 26th, I let her go. My father picked her up to bring her to a family member's house, and I get a call from a DCF worker the day after, because she went to go sleep at my best friend's house after that, because it was in the same town, not knowing that my best friend had already betrayed me. She was so butthurt that her ex was accused of sexually harassing the girls, even though I had proof and texts and all that she had turned on me after 23 years of friendship. So that was pretty sickening. So I didn't realize she was in on it, or I would have never let my daughter go there. But I did. And DCF was like, oh yeah, just to let her cool off or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, sure, I guess. But then I find out on the 27th, my daughter's not there. She's back at the family member's house. Okay? Then my daughter calls me bawling her eyes out, saying she's sorry, and I don't know what she's talking about, right? So come to find out, that family member had bought her $1,000 sneakers, these rare Jordans or whatever. I don't even, like these red metallic Jordan 3s or something. Crazy. And then had got her to call DCF and say that we were fighting really bad. First of all, we were arguing. There was no physical contact. There's no physical abuse going on. It was an argument between two females on their period. It was pretty, heightened. It wasn't violent. It wasn't dangerous. None of that. Okay? So, with that said, Ari was bawling. Like, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, no, it's not your fault. You know, my family was messing with my child's head. Enticing her, and it was really sick behavior. After she supposedly had a wonderful day too. I had heard from multiple people that were there the day after Christmas who said, no, there's no way that they called DCF. Like, we had a great day. You don't understand. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, DCF called me, and Ariella told me. So I know this for a fact at this point, right? So, whatever. So she had been back there, and so I call my friend. She goes and gets her. Now the next day, 12/28, she's back at the family member's house. And I'm told by my former best friend that, her cousin just came and picked her up. They're going out for lunch. That was a lie. Went right to my family member's house. Now, mind you, this is one of the family members who had a restraining order. So even though they had a restraining order on me, they went and picked up my child without permission and then brought him to the other family member's house with a restraining order. Okay. And then I'm calling Ari. I'm like, what is she going to do? Like, walk out of there? And I can't go there to pick her up. The police in that town did nothing. The DCF worker did nothing, right? So I'm calling around. I called my local police. I'm calling around. No one in my family will go bring my daughter and bring her to a neutral place where I can grab her. So finally, by the evening time, I have to make the decision to call one of the family members who have a restraining order on me and ask why they transported my child there and ask her to transport her somewhere neutral. So I did that, and they immediately hung up and went to the police station to try to get me arrested. Tell me that's not entrapment. Okay? How is that not entrapment? So when I explained to the lieutenant of this town what really happened and how my joints are eroding and how my disease has been out of control, and first of all, if they arrest me, this is probably going to tear, and it's like I have a bone lying right on a blood vessel there where that brachial plexus is. It's not really safe, right? So I was scared of being arrested, and I want them to understand that. So when he heard the whole story, what was going on, he said, you need to call blank police station and demand to speak to the chief immediately. The fact that they did not go get your child is so inappropriate, but what can I say? That same family member, I don't know if they have connections or whatever else, but seems to be whenever like the courts or DCF or police are involved, for some reason, she doesn't need any evidence and things are just taken by word, right? So whatever. So we get off the phone. He's like, I have to send you a summons because you broke the law. He's like, but no one's coming to arrest you. I don't want you to worry about that. It'll probably get thrown out at magistrate. Right? So that was that. Got the court date a few weeks later, so on and so forth. So my daughter still doesn't come home. I get a call from my best friend, my former best friend. She said, oh, Ari's back here. Da-da-da-da. Don't worry about it. And I'm like, okay. Right, so more drama. So school vacation's almost up. You know, I want Ari to come home. Like, she didn't need this much time to cool off. We never got a chance to reconcile and talk about everything like we usually do. And what day was it? It was New Year's Eve. New Year's Eve. And I'm sitting here on the couch by myself. Mind you, the attempted arrest when I was like entrapped was only a couple days before. So when that failed and they didn't get me arrested, multiple people in the family call the police in my town and tell them I'm making suicidal statements. Mind you, I have not spoken to these people cordially, one of them since the November incident, and before that it had been September, and the other one since September, right? Yet they're calling and saying the family, remember back in the initial report, family's planning to section her. So this was premeditated. This is a premeditated attack, okay? Excuse me. Premeditated. I'm suicidal. I have a plan. Okay? So I get the cop knock. Now I know what the cop knock is at this point because I've had the police at my door so many times for the false restraining order breaking and all that. Okay? So I answer the door and he's like, I'm Sergeant so-and-so. Can I come in? We've gotten some reports. And I'm like, oh, what law did I break now? Thinking it's another restraining order thing. And he's like, no, not that. We're just concerned about your safety. Now, I look like crap at this point. The stress and everything else has me so weak. I'm in so much pain. I'm so inflamed. I'm really in tough shape, right? I'm like limping around the house. But like I explained to him, like, you know, I'm sick. There's a lot of family drama going on. The holidays were ruined by my family. It's been really tough on my daughter. I'm like, but God, no. Like, you know, my ex had unalived himself. Like, I don't take that kind of thing lightly. I would never leave my daughter alone in this world, and I never made statements like that, and I don't talk to these people, right? So the officer was like, okay, can you show me around? So I like showed him around the house and stuff, and then we were like talking about how the holidays suck. He was telling me how he's like divorced and how his landlord's gonna kill him because he just put in a new washer and dryer. Like, me and this guy were cool, or so I thought, right? Talked for like a half hour, and he's like, you know, he's like, Julie, he's like, I'd clear you right now if I could. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, I'd clear you right now if I could. He's like, but it's out of my hands. I'm like, what do you mean it's out of my hands? He's like, well, the paramedics are coming up. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, yeah, well, they're gonna make the decision. And I looked at him like, the decision's already made, isn't it? And he was like, so they come up. Long story short, they're like, all right, ma'am, let's get going. I said, excuse me, sir, I have rheumatoid arthritis in almost every single joint. I'm in a horrific flare. I didn't make suicidal statements. I've been getting criminally harassed by my family for months to no freaking end, despite my disabilities, which is technically domestic violence. No, it is not even, yeah, it is domestic violence. No technical thing about it. It is. And it's abuse of a disabled person, right? So I was like, so please do not rush me. Okay, because I can't move fast. And luckily the sergeant was like, lay off her. She needs time. And he helped me out to get out of the house. And I said, all right, fine, send me to my hospital where I had been 2 weeks before, where I found out my disease was progressing in my collarbone. Remember that whole thing that I was delusional, imagining my bones were disintegrating? The ends of my collarbone are the bones disintegrating. That's not a delusion. And I actually had medical proof of that. Okay, it's part of the disease. Anyways, so they take my blood, they take my urine. Okay, this was like the second drug test I hadn't agreed to this one. This one wasn't planned, but I had already taken a drug test because of the accusations that were made against me, and they were all normal. DCF left that out of their reports. I swear to God. Mind you, I have all this paperwork. I can prove this stuff. So once again, I get clean drug screens, clean blood screens. You know, they let me out. I'm out of there in an hour and a half, 2 hours. Mind you, I'm sitting in the psych ER. The 2 hours I'm there, right? My best friend calls me and says, oh, so-and-so just showed up with guardian paperwork for Ariella. I said, what do you mean, guardian? For what? For what? I'm about to get out of here. Are you serious? And I should have known with her tone and how like disinterested and like laissez-faire she sounded. She didn't sound concerned at all, and she hated this family member for years, like hated her. Hated most of my family for years, right? And she's like unconcerned. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean? She's like, yeah, well, I don't really know, but that's what happened. So later on, I had figured out that, you know, she was in on this. So what they were trying to do is give me the worst news of my life while I was in the psych ER, hoping I'd flip out and get held, especially for the long weekend, because it was New Year's Eve, like I said. So, hour and a half later, I'm out. And, of course, all these people that were texting me before, my fake friends and so on, oh, we just want you to get better. Everyone just wants you to be well. I'm like, what are you guys talking about, right? What is this, right? Get well? Like, what? Right? But when I got out, none of them could give me a ride home. No, not one. Actually, like, I called one of my friends from when I had to stop practicing nursing for, like, my memory issues and all that from the head injury. When me and Ari actually ended up, like, in a shelter, and, you know, these family members didn't reach in that when I lost everything, lost my everything that I had worked so hard for. And we were literally had nowhere to sleep. None of them took Ari in then. No, none of them. But now all of a sudden they care when their reputations, or so they think their reputation's at stake. So I called somebody from my friends from the shelter, actually picked me up. She actually had her husband leave work to come get me. Okay? My own family and friends, so no one was around. No one could be bothered, right? So I get home. You know, I'm not well. Really not well. Call Ari, try to figure out what's going on. She's crying. She was convinced by my family, she was told that I was suicidal, that she can pick a guardian because I was going to the psychiatric hospital. So they were lying and manipulating my child, okay? That's criminal behavior. That's disgusting, right? And a bunch of them, including my ex-best friend. Like, this is sickening, right? All while being basically brainwashed to think that what happened to her the month before with that guy harassing her, that didn't happen. That's not real, in whatever else. This is real gaslighting, people. This is actual gaslighting. So things start to get really messy. So on that Monday, I fly up to the courthouse to try to figure out what the heck is going on, right? And I said, I need an emergency hearing. Guess how far out the emergency hearings were booking? 35 days. I had to wait 35 days for an emergency hearing. I wasn't even told why the guardianship was allowed. So, come to find out, DCF, who had left out my clean drug screens, left out the reports from the school basically saying, like, no, we have a plan with the mother to do this, this, and this. She had warned us about that this would happen with family. They left all that out. And they're still going with the hearsay from my family members and this ex-best friend. So I'm missing a lot of stuff, but I just want the basics to be understood here. So I finally get to the hearing, right? So there's a law in Massachusetts that if you are low income, which I am, waiting for disability, which people have called disabilities, that I'm faking it, so it's taking some time. And I was supposed to be informed of my right to a lawyer and appointed a lawyer, and also told why the guardianship was granted. I wasn't told why the guardianship was granted. I wasn't given any paperwork or the affidavits. I was never even properly served any guardianship paperwork, okay? My family member's friend had texted me it, okay? Texted me it, okay? So now I'm just told that at the end of this emergency hearing that I was allowed to speak for like 2 seconds at, right? I'm told, nope, it's gonna get extended. DCF is on the phone during the hearing and they say, we don't like the way Julie talks to her daughter, so we are in favor of extending it. Keep that in mind, okay? So it's extended to the next hearing, so for 90 days. So, back to DCF. quickly because now it's extended. DCF does not have custody of my child. DCF doesn't even technically have an open case because all my drug screens were clean. My doctors at this point are like, no, we have no concerns of mental instability. The hospital had cleared me and said, nope, there's toxicity with the family. The family's going behind her back saying that her diseases aren't real. She didn't need chemo. Every time patient reports, every time she tries to put boundaries with family and go no contact with them, something like this happens, which it does, but never to this severity. So DCF works wicked young, really naive. So she comes over like a week later and we're sitting there and we're talking about everything. And she's like, well, things are, you don't understand. She's like, even your best friend's saying you're acting strangely. So that's when finally I was like told, somebody else, because I was keeping that whole matter that had happened in November with her ex-husband private at that time for her sake. I was still protecting her, right? Little did I know she was behind my back, part of this whole takedown and ruining of my life, right? So then I was like, well, you know what? That makes sense because, her ex-husband was a creep to my daughter and his own daughter. And when I called him out, mind you, I was respectful about it. And I had a whole safety plan and stuff where, the girl's safety would have been guaranteed and it would have given that creep's girlfriend the ability to get rid of him, which she wanted to do, and get him out of the house and off the lease. But no. My ex-best friend, she needed, God forbid she lose her weekends temporarily, and God forbid that, she looks bad. That's all she could think about. How could you think that I'd let that happen? Like, no, you didn't know that was happening. That's not what I'm saying. Like, this isn't about you, right? This is about the kids' safety. But nope, egos, right? This is all about egos gone out of control, So she's like, so the worker's like, well, why didn't you report it? And then she was like, oh, because it would have been seen as retaliation. I said, exactly. And she's like, well, now that I'm meeting you in person, I see how you are in person. She's like, it's very different from like the way people are describing you and da-da-da-da. So blah, 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 blah. Okay, cool. So I think we're getting somewhere. Even though I'm frustrated, this is very unjust. Again, there's no task plan. My drug screens are clear. My doctors are saying I'm mentally stable. So it's literally these 3 people that I wanted to go no contact with, and, the other group around them, their friends and whoever, that were attacking me, right? So February 11th comes. Now, that's my birthday. So I just happened to look down at my phone and I'm like, you know what? I wonder where my daughter is tonight. I missed her like crazy, right? And I look down, I check her location, and she is back at my best friend's ex-husband's house. GPS coordinates. Screenshot the coordinates. Start texting Ari. She's not answering, so I call her. Little did I know, my best friend and one of the family members in my family, possibly the one who has guardianship, and my former best friend tell Ari that anytime if I'm yelling or seem mad or anything on the phone, to record me. So I called Ari bugging out. Not like at her, like terrified for her safety and her friends and my friend's daughter, of course. And, so I'm like, what are you thinking? Like, this is not a good decision. This is not safe. Like, da 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 da. I think I'm swearing, you know what I mean? So then we hang up and she FaceTimes me. So we're like going on and like, I'm like just all upset, yelling, and again, not at them, but I'm a yeller and a swearer. What can I say? So they record it, and that was used and sent to DCF to support the allegations that I'm mentally unstable, even though I was like yelling that way because my child was back at an alleged pedo's house, where I had text messages from 3 months exactly, 11/11, 2/11. Okay, so my former best friend literally sent my child here on my birthday. on my birthday. Complete disregard for the kid's safety. Never mind the guardian. You're going to send the child right back here? When these allegations were made, not only the allegations, I have the text messages and the calls. I have proof, right? But that's okay. The state sees nothing wrong with that. So the next meeting I have with DCF, number one, again, no task plan, not told why the case was open, because first they said, possible drug abuse. What drug abuse? Like, what? Like, I use THC for pain. Like, are you kidding me right now? And so that it was, mental instability. But then my doctors don't say the only person that says I'm mentally unstable are literally the people in my family who were trying to silence me. So we end up going to court another time, and I am basically, so the guardian and the DCF worker say my daughter's doing great, there's no issues, her attendance great, grades are great, she's doing awesome, she's better than ever, right? So then it comes to me and I said, actually, I go, my child disclosed to me that she has an open criminal case now that I'm not going to get into details with because it's very bad, that happened under the guardian. She was sent back to this pedo's house on this date, because the worker had also said, we don't like the way Julie's talking to her daughter. There was another incident in February. I said, yeah, the incident in February is because my daughter was sent back to this creep's house where she had already been sexually harassed by this adult male, right? So the court orders an investigation, but he awarded me weekends with my child. Yay! So I'm supposed to have her, right? So this is like all the way to Easter, I think. And so what ended up happening is, the guardian just couldn't stand the fact that I would have weekends with my child, because it was important that she kept us isolated away from each other so, she could continue basically brainwashing my child. And it wasn't basically, this is real. Like, think about it. The, gaslighting her so she thinks that, sorry guys, that guy was no threat, that I was suicidal, that I needed to be sectioned. Like, they're telling my daughter all kinds of really toxic stuff, right? So she went right down, sat in court all day, I guess, to stop the weekends and say I needed supervised visits, right? So now my father comes into court with me, because now the court dates in like 2 weeks because it's a motion, whatever. So we go forward. I still don't have a lawyer, by the way. And now I've requested one, and I still don't have a lawyer. They still haven't given me a lawyer, and I still don't have the affidavit of telling me why the guardianship was granted. Still. Brockton Probate Court. Swear to God, no lawyer of the day. Okay? No appointed lawyer. Nobody told me why my child was taken away. Not the judge, nobody. Okay? Complete crapshoot. So my father comes in to explain, like, they're not fighting how it's being reported. Like, they argue like a mother and daughter do. Like, this is completely being reported, whatever. The criminal case had not come up, actually, because this is the day it was found out, when the 2 weeks later, when both the guardian and the DCF worker were both like, Ari's doing so much better, blah, blah, blah. And I said, that's not true. She has an open court case now. This is happening. Another incident that's happening. And my daughter, so I'm listing off this stuff, and the judge was BS because he yelled at the guardian and the worker, basically saying, how dare you omit these facts and lie about this child. He told the guardian, I've had enough out of you. You willfully lied to this court, So I'm finally, yes, I'm getting somewhere. Thank God, right? So he orders a probation investigation, and he screamed at DCF and basically said, did you ever think the guardian needs the 51A and that DCF needs to take custody of the child? And I raised my hand. I said, Your Honor, with all due respect, I go, nothing that was reported was true except for the argument that me and my daughter had. So there's no reason for DCF to take custody. They don't even have a task plan on me. And now we're 4 months, 5 months in to the case. And if you look up the laws, Massachusetts, if you are accused of neglecting or abusing a child, right, within 2 weeks, you're supposed to have a task plan of what your expectations are, okay? Never got one, all right? So, whatever, court bullshit. Court keeps getting pushed and pushed because it's Brockton probate and it's freaking filled to the brim. The custody orders are completely ignored. I'm once again isolated away from my child. We finally had a visit after months of being isolated away from each other. It went awesome. My child didn't want to go home. As soon as the guardian picked up on this and the fact that she wanted to stay and whatever else, she didn't let her come back over for weeks and weeks. Started a huge fight between us. That started to become a thing. So when we would have a visit, things would be planted in my child's head and she'd be calling me flipping out, okay? And I'm like, honey, like, where is this coming from? Da 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 da. And again, the guardian, my former best friend, who planted in my daughter's head that like this whole crazy story that wasn't even true, right? That like I had told everybody, mind you, I haven't talked to anybody in months. Everybody that my child, that I said my daughter was suicidal and like spread this letter around. Like, number one, it's not even true. Number two, why would you tell a child that? Like, you psychopath. You're a legitimate psychopath. All to cover up your ex-husband's a creep. And mind you, the guardian and her keep pushing like I'm the crazy one when they literally, that family member went and picked up my best friend in Colorado because this same guy that threatened the kids was trying to kill her when she was pregnant. Totally sane though, let's defend him. Yeah, totally, right? So this keeps going on and on. Now at this point, any friend group that I had, any friends I had, were somehow convinced that I'm this drug abusing, child abusing psychopath that's completely gone off the deep end that's making up their disease, right? And the sad thing is in the midst of all this, my disease got so much worse. I ended up getting diagnosed with ankylosing spondylitis as well. I've lost damn near 40 pounds from the stress and heartbreak. The stabbing in the back from that best friend was the worst though, because if it wasn't for her, then these attacks wouldn't have been successful. But, you know, they had people calling me, pretending to be my friend, taking me out for coffee in the beginning, just to get information, to see where my head was at and what I was planning to do to get help so that they'd know how to fight it. So, it just continues on and on. And at this point, you know, they can financially provide things for my daughter that I can't. And I'm waiting to be on disability. It can't work. And then, it gets so bad that, like, a certain family member who had, you know, has filed false reports on me in the past, one being that I held a knife to my daughter's throat, which is like this whole bullshit thing. It's a whole nother story that I literally have paperwork on because they called the cops on me and said that I had pulled a knife on my daughter. In reality, she had my daughter in a wet bra, in like white bra and string bottoms when she was 9 years old at the Nantasket beach at night, right? And there was like guys staring at my daughter's see-through bathing suit when I got there. So when we were walking out, I was like, hey, don't make me use this on one of those guys. Like, oh, because I had said to my daughter, I'm like, oh, honey, come here, take my t-shirt. And she didn't want to. And then Ari's like, you're fine. Oh, thank God I said Ari. And then this guy, the family member was like, she's fine, she's innocent. I said, yeah, but these guys looking at her aren't. Like, stop undermining my parenting. If you can tell, this is a common denominator, my family. So when we were walking out, I was like, hey, don't make me use this. I didn't open it. Don't make me use this, my little pocket knife, on one of these creeps because they're looking at my daughter. Like, but like laughed it off. I wasn't like, rah, right? So, that was that. And then she called the cops the next day and said that I pulled a knife on my daughter. So we have this huge argument. I'm trying to get my daughter out of this family member's house. Cops come. She claims it. Her loser fucking partner goes along with the story just because, right? It doesn't matter that they're both felons, right? And all this other stuff. And mind you, I have nothing against felons. It's just, I'm just painting the facts because they keep trying to like criminalize me, entrap me, attempt to get me sectioned, lie to my child, right? Like this, mind you, like it's so much worse, guys. This stuff I wish I could say publicly that I can't, but my child has been put through the ringer and some horrible stuff has happened under this guardianship. And now that DCF worker had never went to her supervisors and been like, hey, I messed up. I didn't do my due diligence and check with the schools. I didn't do my due diligence and check with the courts to see what was really going on with this child. I just reported what the guardian reported and I was wrong. No. Of course not. No accountability. She never told her supervisors any of this and just kept going along with it like everything was fine and she was doing everything legal, despite the fact there's no task plan. Okay? So as you can see, there's a history of false DCF reports, a history of false police calls. Anytime there's like an issue where I'm trying to get away from the family or balance myself or whatever, and it's always me and my child who have to take the hit. My child's the one who's had to deal with all this drama year after year after year after year. So now all of a sudden, my daughter reported to the courts that I held a knife to her throat when she was little. Her aunt told her. That's what she reported. Okay? So I said to the court investigator, I said, well, you can see this whole investigation was done because DCF was called and I have all the things. I give her the date for it. Showed how it was screened out, how the investigator was like singing my praises and saying how despite the very scary things that we had been through, how I had parental resilience and appropriate coping methods, and I was, teaching my daughter certain things. I got a really good report, and it was like very, did they look at that? No, they didn't. So at this point, I've already grieved to like the ombudsman at DCF, state representatives, the ADA, the disability coordinators, the whole nine. It took me messaging the federal ADA, complaining about DCF, then finding out that DCF already were sued by the federal ADA for discriminating against disabled parents. I shit you not. Okay, now here they are doing it again. So now I'm getting calls from the supervisor. Oh, now we want to meet your accommodations and da-da-da-da-da. I said, you guys haven't even sent me a task plan. Like, what are you talking about? Like, this isn't even a real case. It's like, whatever. So they send me a task plan. The task plan, literally, the first thing in it says, I would have to basically, do I have it in front of me? I'd have to break the restraining orders in order to be compliant with it. It would force me to use the family members who are the restraining orders as like they're the barometer. They tell how my mental health is. Like they would be like my mental health people. Like what? And then it goes on after telling me that I'd have to like use them as contacts and they would be the I found it. They would be the barometer. So mind you, okay, so I was supposed to have the task plan in December and told why they were supporting whatever. It wasn't written till it wasn't written until March. Okay? March. It was sent May 18th. It would require me to break the law. It would put my family in charge of my mental health progress, which what? Telling me I need to use them as support systems. Yeah, the people that have been abusing me the past, like a complete joke, right? And then the next one, it tells me to get treatment for my mental health. Now this is back because of like the videos where I was like yelling and stuff. And again, I was like, that was situational. That's not me every day. Like, didn't matter how many lies from the beginning with the bipolar, the borderline shit, the delusions, thinking Christmas trees are devils, like that whole night, like that's all taken as fact. And like, I have like this mountain of evidence building up, and this worker just isn't looking at it. She's still going with the hearsay, right? It was crazy to me. So now the supervisor gets involved, because now I'm setting in grievances to like the top of DCF, the supervisor, state representatives, the ADA. So finally, the ADA gets a hold of it. They get involved, and so now DCF's changed its tune a little bit, right? Now this was the interesting thing. This was like only a couple months ago that this happened. I think it was June finally. Yeah, June. So 8 months after my daughter was allowed to go to a different guardian, still wasn't told why. DCF was supporting it, which I kept fighting. I'm like, if you guys don't even have a task plan for me, which they did now, but I'm like, this task plan I have to break the law to be compliant with it. And then in the next line, it tells me not to break the law or have any more police contact, when I was having the police called on me and I was entrapped back in December. So that's not even like, that was like insult. It was like, it would be funny if it wasn't so traumatizing, right? And then it's like telling me that I have to do stuff that I was already doing, like we were already in therapy and stuff like that. And then it's talking about Ariela's therapy. Ari needs to attend school consistently and get good grades. What if my daughter doesn't understand a subject? What's a good grade, right? And why isn't that standard being held with the guardian she's with? Because her attendance was horrible. She got criminal charges. She got suspended from school. She was having attendance issues with her grades, right? She was put on a medication, okay? But her heart rate started going up to 188 because she was having panic attacks so bad. And the state still doesn't blink an eye or start to believe what's really happening. Because at this point, adults aren't even speaking up to these family members. You think a child's going to? Now she's even been like brainwashed to believe, like they're bringing up, like the whole knife thing, like in convincing her that something else happened that didn't. Like that's really sick. And the only reason why they were like even somewhat successful with that is because they isolated her away from me for so long. Like, this is really sick shit. So what happens when the ADA gets involved is now the supervisor gets on the phone with me, right? And they're like, oh yeah, well, we never had jurisdiction in the court, so, we can't go in and say whether we support or don't support the guardianship. I said, I have been asking you that for months, okay? And you guys did not give me an answer. And now you're telling me you never had jurisdiction in that courtroom. You never had room to say anything. You didn't even have a task plan or a properly open case, yet you were supporting guardianship. This wouldn't have happened without that. It would have never happened. Oh, but no, and literally this is what they say. Oh, but that's in the past. That's in the past. I've been isolated from my child at 70 months at that point. Are you kidding me? And they're just like, oh, okay, but that's the past. Funny, that's the past, right? Mind you, I have some of this recorded, so another day, another time, we can go over that shit. Because it's incredible, the claims they make and stuff that they can't back up. It's frightening. It's downright frightening. And I think that what I've gotten is a taste of how Massachusetts DCF in probate court treat what they deem as mentally unstable parents. Because again, remember, I was reported to be borderline, bipolar, all this crazy stuff for reacting appropriately to drastic, crazy situations. Okay? I'm sorry, but those situations would have made a lot of unsuicidal people suicidal. Horrible stuff. I had people that I thought were my dear friends telling other people I barely knew to stay away from me because I'm psychotic and not safe to be around. Well, I'm like here, sick to my stomach from my meds, just trying to get by day to day. No one to trust, no one to talk to, no one advocating for me, no one sticking up for me and my daughter. My daughter's the one who's gonna have to deal with this the rest of her life. and nobody cares. And now DCF is telling me that, oh, I never had jurisdiction. Oh, okay, great. But they're just like, no big deal. So, still haven't, finally got a lawyer though. But at this point, like, it's not even on till November. That'll be a year. Her school system's been changed. She's already been sexually harassed by another guy, by the way. All the, like, things I had on her phone to block inappropriate contact and content and, like, certain language and stuff like that, all that was broken, and she's given full access to the internet and stuff like that. And she's, you know, like, involved with boys and stuff now that she really wasn't before. She's acting out, and the state just refuses to see that. But, like, you know, in the task plan, which, by the way, like, so that was never signed or whatever because it was literally ridiculous, right? So once again, they were supposed to revise this, but they can't because I was doing everything I was supposed to be doing, and nothing that was reported was true. Like, you can't make this stuff up. And then they keep reporting that there's, like, certain policies that are policies. Like, they're like, oh, yeah, well, when we get any client, I have this on recording too, we get any client who's on any type of medications, we analyze those medications and we look at them. I said, that's interesting because even as a registered nurse, I go, you can analyze medications and stuff like that, but you can't diagnose. So the very fact that they were using terms like manic, paranoid, the fact that they analyze, that is not within the scope of practice of a social worker. They do not analyze meds. They don't do any of that, okay? So both of them, the supervisor and this worker, were reporting policies that are not policies, trying to manipulate me. Because here's the thing, I am given Valium once in a while by my primary care, my rheumatologist, as a muscle relaxer because I have changes now all down my spine, degenerative changes, joint space narrowing. I have joint space narrowing in both my hips with sclerotic ridging. My knees are involved, my heels are involved, my toes are involved, my fingers are involved, my collarbones, again, my neck, my thoracic, my lumbar, my sacroiliac spine, everywhere. I have it everywhere now. The rheumatic changes. It's gotten much worse with the stress. It didn't matter the letters my doctors wrote, begging the judge, begging DCF to, you know, work to give me, like, a comfortable and safe environment to give these meds the best chance at working. No, all of my stuff has been ignored. Okay. Tell me that's not discrimination against a disabled parent, right? And despite my family members literally lying on record, I have record after record after record proving their lies. I have paperwork for days, okay? And yeah, now I have a lawyer, but again, hearing's not till November. I'm being isolated away from my child. Anytime we did have a visit, it would go great. We'd be getting along, laughing it up, wonderful. And then my family and or my ex-best friend would start feeding stuff in my child's head as soon as she got back to their houses. And she would call me within 24 to 48 hours, flipping out about something, like, remember, like, the suicide thing was one thing. And then, like, it's sickening. It's sickening. First of all, let's say I was crazy, bipolar, everything they said was true. Let's say I'm a drug abusing, psycho, all that, right? Why would you continue to put it in the child's head and put down their mother over and over and over and fill their head with negative stuff if you're looking out for the best interest of that child? Why? But that's not questioned, right? That's not questioned. That's okay. So, like I said, so now that the ADA got involved, they start explaining how they were never supposed to even be in the court. They're never supposed to have a comment on that. So I've requested a fair hearing to get the case closed. I never got a fair hearing date. My requests are ignored. I have requested a domestic violence specialist from the jump since November from DCF over and over and over. I was laughed at. I was scoffed. I still haven't been given one. I still have not been given one. Okay. And at this point, it's like, are you kidding me? Again, all my drug screens, all that stuff was normal. Okay. Come February, one of the family members went for my daughter's